The symptoms of this particular type of disorder is sensitivity and amplified pain. And here are some stats. This is actually from the Mayo Clinic, and they said that there are fewer than 200,000 cases of CRPS that are actually diagnosed yearly. So it's relatively rare, and it happens mostly in 80% of adolescent girls, and it could actually be a genetic disorder. It can be the cause. It could actually develop out of psychological distress or illness, or again, like a broken bone, an injury of some sort. But before we get started, I just want to kind of take some time to recognize the families that were affected by the storms last night in Rowlett and Garland. There were tornadoes. Actually, my board operator, McCrae, a lot of people in his area were actually affected by it. In fact, one of his streets was one of the few that weren't actually affected with damage, but everything around him was pretty devastating. And so I just want to take a moment of silence just to recognize the people that are going through that, especially the day after Christmas. Go out to these families and we wish them well, and that nobody's hurt and people can recover relatively soon from that. It's very devastating. Well, let's get to our topic today. Today, let's start a little bit with what this approach is. So I'm the director of the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, and we use this peripheral biofeedback approach, but actually it's more specialized. This is a type of biofeedback that I've been actually developing for some time now, and I'm actually in the process of writing a book to talk about how this actually works. But it's in the biofeedback arena, and it talks about how it works on helping specific blood flow in certain areas of the body. And so when you can actually retrain a part of the body to collaborate with the brain, then you have this healing component. It's very cathartic. And it's really amazing because we teach these skills to these kids, and it's very easily, it's user friendly. So essentially, once you learn it, you don't really forget it. But the whole point of it is that you can actually concentrate on a certain part of the body, increase blood flow, and there are certain little effects that happen in the body, little sensations. And so you're retraining the brain to coordinate and communicate with that particular region of the body. And so Rachael came into the office, and she was actually in a wheelchair. And let me kind of pull you into this topic a little bit. So she was actually in a wheelchair prior to her coming in. She was actually in a wheelchair, and she was on crutches.
Yes, she was in a wheelchair for long distances of school using crutches. She could not put her foot on the ground. She could not stand touch. To put any sort of sock or shoe on her foot was incredibly painful. She did an amazing job at hiding the pain at school. She kept going to school, and her friends and teachers were very supportive. But it took us about a month to figure out what was going on. She's had several sprains and strains over the years, but this one just did not get better. It was such an odd process that I thought she might have a fracture at first, and so I took her in for x-rays. They came back negative, and then about a week later, she still wasn't able to bear weight in a boot or on crutches, and I noticed her foot was purple from the knee down. It still felt warm to the touch. It wasn't circulation, but it hit me that this might be reflex sympathetic dystrophy, and that's when panic set in, and our journey began to try and find the best way to help her through this.
And so your journey included like going to several doctors?
We started out just at an orthopedist, just to get an x-ray so I could see if there was a fracture or anything in the foot, which there was not, and she was put in a boot, which she never could bear weight in the boot. I had asked for physical therapy to possibly do some treatment for pain control, things that I didn't have access to, and through that process we were referred to a pediatric physiatrist and sports medicine specialist. And during this time, while I was doing research on my own, I had remembered that biofeedback and learning to control this through using biofeedback is such an important part of chronic pain issues. I just did a simple Google search for biofeedback specialists in pediatrics in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and your name popped up, and that's when I contacted you. And it was just, I think it's a miracle that all this came together, and you were here in this area, and we could find you to help her get through this.
And so, aside from being a mom, you're actually also a physical therapist.
I am a physical therapist I don't work with children. I don't work with RSD patients. I have had experience in the chronic pain management field with adults of many different diagnoses through Baylor Pain Management program that they had several years ago. And that's when I learned how important the comprehensive part of this diagnosis was, that you have to address the anxiety and fear that comes along with having pain so that you can even tolerate the therapy.
And any individual, doesn't matter if you're a child or if you're an adult, if you experience pain, there's actually negative symptoms that occur from that. Obviously, you're uncomfortable, but then the emotional factor, and we see this a lot in therapy with a lot of kids, we have to address not only the pathology of the symptom and the stress, but also address more the anxiety component, because now there's limitations on what they feel they can do. There's limitations on the quality of life. They can't go out and do things that they used to be able to do. And so there's a lot of fear that sets in and worry that they're going to make it worse. And so a lot of kids will they'll go internal and they'll start to suppress feelings and emotions. They'll start to shut down and limit themselves, and everybody around them are affected by it.